want to see the best picture ever.
It's really close and clear.
It is.
Is it?
Nothing like putting you under pressure.
Best picture ever.
You know what? I always forget about that thing. The first time I taught ACI here and we did the YouTube thing, I first thought, oh my Lord. And then I just forgot about it. And now I forget. And then every once in a while I go, oh my God, that's on YouTube. Or Ustream.
Someone's popped on already.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
okay.
Do you know who?
Let's keep going. So I'm gonna get the rest of the class in 30 minutes. We have a lot to go, so I'm gonna do my best not to like go off in some sidebar and just try to streamline it so it can be done at 9:30.
No, you can only have one person logged in. When you're logged on, you have to. That's what it is.
But so you'll notice, right? You'll notice you've probably smelling the scent in the air about the Bodhisattva vows. It's all about your motivation, right? It's all about people are your children now. People are your children now. They're your precious jewel. They're your precious child now. It's like you can't diss anyone as best you possibly can. Okay, number 6.
I'm just going to move the light a little bit because it's like...
You want? I can turn it off if you want. Or
Yeah,
just turn it off. Yeah. Sure. Not accepting money or other material wealth if someone offers it to you. Out of a desire to hurt them, or anger or laziness. So, what does that mean? If someone comes up to you and offers you things, as a bodhisattva, you have to graciously accept it for a few reasons. I mean, for one thing, you want to allow them the karma. You know, if someone offers you a gift, well, you know what it's like when you want to offer something and they say no. It's a bummer. You know, so like accept it. Give someone the beauty of allowing you
What if you don't want to?
Then you can give it to somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. So here's some exceptions. Okay. If you know you'll get attached to the thing after you took it, if you know you would be consumed with attachment, you can say, okay, you know, dude, I would love it, but I can't have it because I will just play this game all day, right? Someone, you know, who knows? Someone offers you like some little PlayStation, and you're like, man, I'd love to, but I just can't. I need to do my meditations, right? Then, like that. Or, if you are sure that the person who wants to give it to you would later regret it, which is a very bad deed. It's a bad deed to try and do a virtue and then later regret it. It's a special kind of a twist in the mind that propagates ignorance in your mind. If you do a virtue and then later wish you didn't, it goes against, right? It's against the grain of what makes nirvana. So you want to make sure that no one has that experience. So if they offer you a bunch of money, say I want to give you like $1,000, and you're like, and you know that they're going to regret that, then you can't take it. Then you can't take it. No. Yeah. You have to judge the situation. If you think it might not belong to that person, if it's stolen, in other words, right? Don't buy the hot speakers. Oh no, that was buying. Don't take the hot offering. If you think it might hurt the person financially, which is probably to do with regret, but it's also, if you don't want it, even if they wouldn't regret it, you also don't want them to be hurt financially by their offering. If it's already been dedicated to some other use, or if it would freak people out if you owned it, right? Like say you're a Buddhist and you want people to know you're a Buddhist and you want to inspire people to practice Buddhism, and someone offers you like a gun. And you're like, no, I can't own a gun. Right? People are going to think, people won't study Buddhism if they see a gun in my house. Like that. Things like that. Moving right along. Not giving the Dharma to those who want it. Sound familiar? Dun, 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 dun. Does it sound familiar? Does it sound like maybe a root vow? A root downfall?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, right? One of the root downfalls is not giving Dharma, right? But the motivation is different. Do you remember what the motivation was for the first one? Why not giving Dharma? Out of possessiveness, right? Which is particularly ridiculous and evil, right? Someone wants a Dharma teaching and you're like, I don't want to give it because then you'll know more than me or something. Okay, that's particularly, evil, right? This is the same thing but different motivation. This motivation basically is any other motivation other than that one. Like, what does my card say? Out of malice, desire to hurt them, or anger, envy, or laziness. Okay? Any other motivation other than not wanting to share it. Exceptions. If you're sick, you don't have to give the Dharma if you're too sick to give it. Or if it would teach them a lesson not to give it. And again, it always has to be pure motivation and loving. And here's some exceptions involving problems that the student might have. Okay? Like, if the kind of student wants you to teach them Dharma, but really they're just there because they're waiting for you to make a mistake. Waiting, they're just coming there to be critical, and you don't have to teach them if you know that. Okay. They've just come to be disrespectful. And they even say if they're not sitting properly. But that's going to be. I've never ever seen anyone ever do that, and I think what that means is, if they're just basically outright showing that they have no respect for you. I mean, right? If you happen to know that no matter, if you taught all bloody night, they wouldn't get it, you also don't have to teach them, right? Or if you know they would freak out if you taught them the real thing, right? We talked about that, like emptiness. If you taught them the full deal, maybe they would freak out. There's there's tantric vows, for instance, the 50 verses on Guru Yoga, and there's certain ways that you're supposed to act towards your tantric lama if they become your tantric lama, which is they're very heavy and very hard to understand. And you're not going to teach that to somebody if it would absolutely flip them right out, right? Like that. And we'll discuss those some other time, some other day, but I won't, unless I become your tantric lama or something like that. I can't. But those kinds of vows are specifically meant for you to not be able to do them. Was it Lord Atisha said, I've never broken my monk's vows. I very, very occasionally break my bodhisattva vows, but I break my tantric vows every 5 seconds. So, I know I'm talking out of context and no one here understands what I'm talking about. Maybe you do, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but just, you don't want to freak someone out, and if you think they're going to freak them out, you don't teach it to them until they're ready. If they're not really interested in what you're saying, and they don't have any real belief in what you're saying, and they don't have any intention of following it, if you know that to be true, you don't have to teach it. Yeah.
What would the concentric circles be for this? Because obviously, if you're going to teach Dharma to others, would it just be teacher to student, or say for amongst the Sangha? But if you're out in the world and...
Yeah, I mean, if you're out in the world, and you would just do your best to try and see if it's a good condition for it to happen. you know. But generally, if someone comes up to you and asks you to teach them Dharma in the world, you're not going to have this problem, right?
I'm just thinking for the sake of in the book, you know, in
Yeah,
the Six
when you get
Times
to that
book,
vow.
when you're not actually a teacher.
You're not actually a teacher.
And you have an opportunity, that, not Dharma per se, but it is Dharma, but it's just in a different way. They don't realise it.
Yeah. Then how would you break that vow, like you say?
Yeah,
Like, how would that vow look
when the
like?
vow comes up in your book,
Yeah.
like, it's hard to know what to put. Because I
Yeah.
had it today and I was like,
Yeah, you don't know what to put, exactly.
no.
Well then, you'd have to extrapolate, like, or go into concentric circles into, like, if it's not the Dharma, then what else might it be, right? Or did someone come to you that appeared to need something you would have to give some sort of information on, or something that you knew that you could help them, like maybe something that you learned in your field and you saw someone and they were asking you about it, and if you didn't give it,
Okay.
right? Things like that would apply to your normal life, where you would, you know, like if like for me, if I wasn't teaching the Dharma and someone at work wanted to learn how to do a certain skill, for instance, and they asked me a question, and I just, you know, they wanted to know, how do you do this? How do you finish with with the machine? How do you use a concrete machine to finish the floor? And they sincerely wanted to know, and out of some affliction, I just said, get away from me. I don't want to teach you anything. Right? I don't want to teach you. Then I would be a minus. Right? And then, of course, that's not going to happen. But if I had that vow and I was in that situation, I would have to go to find a minus. I'd have to go, okay, was there any part of my mind that just didn't want to? A lot of times, you can do pluses and minuses in your book, and just try and check in how you were in that moment. Like, did you have respect for that person or not? Right? Did you have respect for the person as they asked you to do anything, or when you're with them? And then you could say, yeah, wow, I actually in my mind I see them as below me, or something like that. And you can have that as the minus, and then like that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're gonna roll here. Oh, if you think that teaching them they might get a bad attitude that would make it even worse than before. Like, for instance, if you know these kinds of people. Oh, hey, it would be harmful if you squash that bug. And then they just squash the bug. And not only that, but they just go to the way to squash lots of bugs right in front of you. I'm squashing bugs, John. Right? So you don't teach to that person. Okay, the next 9 vows are against the second perfection, which is morality. All right, number 8. Rejecting persons whose morality is apparently impure out of malice, anger, or laziness. So Jason Kappa gives deeds like someone who has committed one of the 5 misdeeds, right? They've killed their mother, or they've killed their father, or they've tried to draw blood from a Buddha with evil intent, or there's schism in the Sangha. But basically what it means, or someone who has broken the root vows, you can't ignore them, you can't reject them, you have to reach out to them and try to help them. So in a circle of bodhisattvas, if someone is just ignoring their vows and starting to act immoral, they're in more trouble than anybody else, because they know better. So you have to try and help them. You have to try and love them and protect them. There are times when you need to cut somebody off if a person is acting badly, but this is not talking about those kinds of times. If they're acting in a certain way, they've fallen, no one respects them anymore, it's up to you. You have to go there and love them. You have to go there and take care of them. Be a bodhisattva. And it doesn't have to be someone who's broken their vows. You know, you just be very careful not cut yourself off from someone who appears, you know, unpopular or sullied or dirty, or you can't, in your mind, you watch for any distinction you might make about this person who appears to have fallen morally. And this assumes that you're strong enough to be around that person and not get pulled into the same thing, right? Exceptions. If you're a great bodhisattva, and you want to teach them a lesson. Again, it's always that. It has to be for them and for them only and not about you. Or if getting close to this person would alienate many other people. So if by your act it would freak a whole bunch of other people out, then you have to go to that, what's the most amount of good for the most amount of people? And maybe you would have to not be very obvious with your protection of this person. Okay. Number 9. Failing to follow the rules which cause others to have faith. So, applying to monks, so a monk is not supposed to eat afternoon. So for them it would be like, they're in Vancouver amongst a bunch of people who know they're a monk, interested in Buddhism, and then the monk is 2 p.m. and sort of has a big meal. It probably wouldn't matter in Vancouver, but in like Sri Lanka or like somewhere where they know about those kinds of things and they know about how monks are supposed to behave, maybe that would say, it would dissuade them from having faith in Buddhism if the monk was acting a certain way in public. So for us, what does that mean for us? I think I talked about this before. As a Buddhist, as a bodhisattva, you're trying to protect other people's faith by not doing things in public, not being seen doing things in public, like stealing or lying. Like, you don't want to be doing the 10 non-virtues and have people see you do those kinds of things and then go, wow, Buddhism's like anything else. The guy's a liar, right? The guy's a thief. Doesn't care about people. Number 10. Performing deeds which are of only lesser benefit for living beings. So this is a specific this is kind of confusing in a sense. So in relation to like if you were a monk, so the Buddha made rules for the monks, like, okay, alcohol is not good for anyone, because at some point in his time after he was enlightened, the monks did some crazy thing with alcohol, and he's okay, no more alcohol for the monks. Right? And he instigated rules, like one of the rules was you can't have cloth for more than 10 days that you're not going to make into a robe. And they were all things that, so that the monks would not get busy, right? All of a sudden own all this cloth, and then have to get a house to have the cloth, and then have to like get a lock to keep the house safe, and then all of a sudden they're busy and they're not meditating, right? So you stay in your monastery, meditate, study, right? So, but as a bodhisattva, you're supposed to hold as much cloth as you can so that you can give people cloth. Right? If someone offers you a warehouse full of cloth, then you say, okay, great, and you start firing it off to people that don't have cloth. So it's like as a bodhisattva, you're not allowed to restrict your activities in the way that a monk is supposed to restrict their actions in the world. It's just saying, like, be a bodhisattva, be in the world. You know, try to take care of other people. Get busy in the world and help other people. So that's the whole difference in the outlook. Do your practice. Do your meditations. Do your yoga, whatever have you. But if you want to make it work, You got to get out in the world and help people. So, it's good to have money. You can help people with money. Money is useful. It's good to have things that you can give to people, right? It's good to have a basement full of stuff that you can give away, right? Or, who knows? Maybe your basement will become a storage place for other people. Who knows? But however you can help others, right? Number 11. The most subtle and the most dangerous bodhisattva vow of all. Failing to break a rule out of compassion. And this refers primarily to the first 7 of the 10 non-virtues. Killing, right? Lying, stealing, sexual misconduct, harsh words, divisive talk, all those things. So what this is meaning is, if you don't break if you don't do this kind of evil act, or kind of evil act, you break the vow. If you don't do it. But there's a certain qualifier. There's an exception to this. The exception is, if you are not this kind of bodhisattva that I'm about to describe, you can't do this vow. 1. For many trillions of years, you have perfected the practice of your path. This bodhisattva must have an extraordinary insight into when it's necessary to do something strange or unusual to help other people. They must possess ultimate great compassion. In other words, they must look on every single being as if they're their only child. They must have that kind of love. They must cherish other people infinitely more than themselves. They must have real bodhicitta. In other words, they must have seen emptiness directly, and must have, like, their heart have cracked open and had that ultimate bodhicitta. They must see that there's no other way than to commit this deed. And the classic example is Lord Buddha, before he was a Buddha, was on a ship, and there was 500 merchants on the ship, and the Buddha was at the point in his existence where he could read minds, and there was a murderer on the ship. And he knew that this person was going to murder everyone on the ship, so the Buddha, who wasn't a Buddha yet, murdered the person who was on the ship to save everyone on the ship and to save that person from their karma. Okay? Right? So, clearly, this captain of this ship, who was the Buddha, was in nirvana, right? Must have been if he'd reached such a high state that he could pull this off, he had to have been in nirvana. He wasn't a Buddha yet, but he could read minds, he knew what to do, right? I really like this story because guess what he was doing? What was he doing? He was at work. He was a captain on a ship. He was just a guy who was on the ship. Extraordinary being at work. He's given root canals. He's at work. He's in nirvana. He's a captain of the ship. He's doing his job. He's a bodhisattva. It's kind of a hidden point there. Out of compassion, he murdered that person. And you're also not allowed to do this kind of thing unless you have the power to transform this person's consciousness to a higher realm. And if you don't have that power, don't worry about this vow. It must be a totally virtuous state of mind. You can't have any kind of hatred for the person. You have to love them with all your heart as you do it. And that's the only way that makes it okay. So, if everything was in place like I just said, and this captain of this ship, who was the Buddha, who wasn't a Buddha yet, didn't kill that guy, he would have broken this vow. Right? And the reason why it typically relates to the first 7 non-virtues is because the last 3 are mental. right? You can't hate somebody for the sake of all beings, right? It doesn't work out. Okay, we're getting there. Number 12, wrong livelihood. So, as bodhisattvas, we're not supposed to make a living or get things for ourselves by doing things like, number 1, flattery. Right? Flattery. You look so good. You look so good that you better buy this car to match your handsomeness. Right? Like things like that. Getting people to do things by flattering them. You can't do that. Hinting. Hinting, right? Taking off, Yasmin? Thanks for coming. We're almost done. Hinting. You're with your friend who has more money than you, and you're hanging around and you go, you know, I was at the Bay and I saw this lazy boy chair. I'd really like to have it, but I'll never be able to afford it. Sure wish I could own it. You can't behave like that.
What if there's a person who's behaving like that towards you?
Well, then don't buy in. Like, teach them a lesson, right? And just don't. Like, don't let them get away with that. Yeah. Or forcing, which basically means this person really doesn't want to give you this thing, but you just keep needling them. You just will not let up, right? It's like the 5th day in the row. You're like, I don't have that chair still. It's amazing. I can't believe I still don't have that chair, even though I know you've got thousands of dollars. Right? You can't blackmail people into giving like donations or things to you, or hassle them or threaten them. Baiting. You can't bait somebody. Baiting means you give something small, hopes to get something bigger in return. Right? That's what that means. Pretending. Fake. You can't fake being a holy person in order to attract donations. Don't do that. These largely pertain to microphones? Oh no! What? Monks. It's got to be near the end. Monks. And what's on my mind? So, I want to be a big star, I guess. Because monks had sponsors, right? When they would rely on donations, and so so it's right and proper to go to your sponsor and say, I need this if you really do need it. But, so the next one, any kind of harmful occupation. And J. Tsongkhapa gives examples. Trading in alcohol. Basically, don't run a liquor store. Don't trade weapons. Don't trade in animals, like a butcher. And he gives the example of being a silk merchant, because they had to kill the silkworms, right? But you have to apply this to modern times. So any occupation which would be harmful to sentient beings. That's quite a lot of that's quite a lot, right? And so you have to do your best, right? You don't break this vow if you're engaged in such an occupation and you're struggling to get out of it. Like maybe you're doing it because you don't have any choice, you have kids to support or whatever, but you're trying to get out of it. You don't break the vow. And we could sit here and just rattle off so many things that people do for money in this world that are harmful to other beings. But you have to do your best and find your middle ground there. Okay, 13. We're almost there. Acting wild and the like. I think I'm in trouble with this one a lot. Basically, when you're just totally off the wall all the time, and you're never serious, no one takes you serious, because you're always being frivolous, you're just wasting time by being goofy. Like all the time. That's what that means. So it basically means like don't waste your time just goofing around. That's basically what that means. Here's the exception. If you're struggling to stop goofing around, but you just can't stop yourself. As long as you're putting up a good fight to your silliness, you don't break the vow. Or, if you're being silly and goofy to stop someone else's grief, right? Bodhisattva, if someone's like depressed and they need a lift, then you goof around, make them feel better. Or if it would lead someone away from doing a bad deed, right? It would distract them from doing a bad deed. It would distract them, get them to do something good. Or if it would just create a better environment and then lead people to doing something good. So basically it's like, yeah, be silly and be goofy, be attractive, be friendly, but don't do it so much that no one takes you seriously and you don't ever do anything. You don't ever like take your past seriously, right? Or if it would attract people to Buddhism, who you have a pretty good guess that they would not come unless you were acting kind of like that, like you were being entertaining and silly, and so you're keeping people there or attracting people to your classes or whatever. So it always comes down to motivation, right? 3 more quick ones. To tell others they need to delay reaching nirvana in order to help others. So there's this rumor going around that bodhisattvas actually try to stop reaching nirvana because for somehow then they won't be around to help other people reach nirvana. And it's a very ignorant idea and it's backwards. If you want to help the most amount of beings, reach nirvana as fast as you possibly can so that you can teach other people to reach nirvana. Because reaching nirvana doesn't mean you go somewhere else. It means you're right here, right now, and you can help people get to nirvana. Even better, reach total Buddhahood so that you can help others. So if you run around telling people that they should just, put brakes on nirvana, or else you're not going to be able to help anybody, that would be breaking that kind of a vow. 15, not to address rumors about yourself. That means if you're aware that people are spreading rumors about you that are false, things like that, and you don't want people to accrue the karma of putting you down, especially because you're a bodhisattva, then you do what you need to do to stop these rumors and make sure people know that they're not true. Finally, number 16, not to correct others, even if it must be done forcefully. So that means you would break that vow if someone was doing something that would harm themselves or another person, and you don't stop them by acting negatively because you're worried about what they'll think about you. Like you don't scream at them and maybe even swear and say, don't do that, you blah blah idiot, maybe even in front of somebody. And you just don't do that because you're worried about what will people, they won't like me if I say that. They won't like me if I'm hard on them. Then you would be breaking that vow because you'd be worried about yourself. You'd be more concerned about your personal reputation than you would about their well-being. Right? You're putting yourself before them. If you need to scream, scream. Mothers know all about that. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this before. I know I have. I have been yelled at or been told things in a negative way that definitely helped me. If you remember those things. When someone very clearly says to you, you're being an idiot. And everybody else is just kind of panning around and trying to be nice to you, and someone says, smarten up. You remember, and it helps. We need those things once in a while. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do what you know must be done. And that, my dear, is your class. Mariska will take us home on this one.
So
Tram ri ra bling shi nyen de gen pa di san ge shin du mi te u wan gi dro kun nam dak shing la chu pa shok yam guru ratna mandalakam niriyatayami di ke wukun sunam yeshe zok zok shin sunam yeshe le jung wei dam pa kuni to pa shok. Good job, everybody.